G'day, welcome to Marcus After Work. Today I've got this rifle in front which I want to go through. If you saw it recently shoot, then you know what it is, but to most people it looks like a normal modern bolt action rifle in a semi-target, semi-tactical sort of form. What it actually is all those features, but it's chambered in a very old cartridge, the 303 British. This one here, a cartridge from 1889, so over 130 years ago. And I suppose it's a little bit of one of the things that is a bit of a fascination for me, or maybe it's a little bit anti the modern brand new cartridge you've got to have for this reason, because it's so much more efficient and all the rest of it. And there's a whole heap of logic to the fact that we haven't actually progressed that far in actual technology. There's some features that we have, but really cartridges are, listen, there are some subtle nuances that make some of the new cartridges a little better, but the very old ones do very well also. One thing I would say is a definite change that where this cartridge started from and to where it is now, the biggest change would be in the type of gunpowder. They used cordite, or little tubes of gunpowder, which didn't get as much in there, was a lot less efficient. So to actually, I don't know how long after that, they started to change to using the type of granulated gunpowder we do now in nitro or in smokeless powder. But that certainly made some improvements. And certainly basically the rest of the bits and pieces here certainly help with how this can be used, but the actual cartridge itself is fundamentally the same. So I'll go through the details of what we did and all those differences to explain to people what we're actually up to. To start off with, it's the MDT or the ORYX Chassis. This is one of the early ones. It's in a long action. I've used the HOWA 1500 action, really good actions, forged steel, nice actions, and very cheap to buy. And then it's all those bits and pieces. It's a HOWA trigger. I've done a little bit of lighting to the trigger, so it's down at just over 1 pound. We're just changing the spring over inside there. And I'll go through the other bits and pieces in a while to go through what I've done with the chassis, because there's some relevant mods for people who've got these chassis in normal sort of rifles, which I've done, which really do help how the rifle shoots. And of course on top here we've got the Zero-Tech scope, which I've used a few times this year. Really great, really enjoying using the Zero-Tech scope, working nicely. But anyway, I'll get back into that. The big feature which I did to do this was to use a bolt action rifle, normal bolt action rifle, and get a barrel made to suit that. Now what I've done with the chambering of this, and I want to say that the chambering was done by Alan Swan and his team, or Grant Swan as the guy who's running the business now, that's Alan's son. And their team did this barrel. They did up another barrel, which I'll get to at the end of this, but really nice job. This is at 26 inches. It's done with 1 in 10 twist. It's blackened, so it's like the blue, it's a hot bluing that they do, ends up with this really nice finish. It's actually one of the better finished barrels I've ever seen. Really, really nice, really, really great work. They've sized it all. They did all the chambering there as well. That they're actually a barrel manufacturer and they do a really good job with their barrels. Very cost effective as well, I'd have to say. They made it all up where they did all of the threading for me. I just gave the bits and pieces, got them action. They did the whole thing up to do what we're doing. A little bit through the nature of what we're doing with this cartridge, which we'll go through in a minute, but also the fact of the finish and the level they could do things to. It's made to suit one of my muzzle brakes, one of my 3-port muzzle brakes on the front of it. And then down the back, it's done where to make this work with a normal bolt action, all the things I wanted to do, is I'm doing it where I am head sizing to the shoulder. So there's not much of a shoulder. They're designed to be head sized from the rim, but that would be a fair bit more detail to try and make this whole function work, not really designed to work like that. So I'm actually head spacing from the shoulder. And I suppose then you simply have a nice clearance around here, so it's unsupported for the last millimetre of the case, which is not going to be a concern at all, and then the extractor can hook on and extract it, and as you saw, it worked without any problems whatsoever. You would have to do a fair few modifications to a magazine to make them feed properly, so it could retain them in the right place with the magazine, all that sort of stuff. Wouldn't be that difficult when I've looked at what we do inside there, but really not something I'm interested in doing. This is about sort of proving what an old cartridge can do with accuracy and all the rest of it. And I should touch on, we have done with the 303, these rounds that I've got on my hand here, these cases I've got in my hand here, I had for the 303 that we shot years ago with extreme long range sights on them, shot it out to 3,000 yards, got within the ballpark, got within the range of it, as they're designed to be shot in volley fire, with their volley fire sights, and just close enough.
Tall and right. Half target tall, 2.5 targets right. Very close.
That's sneaking up on it, isn't it?
Yeah.
As all the wind settles down, getting a bit more control on this magazine.
Tall and left. 2 targets tall, 3.5 targets left. Oh, left. Level the top edge of plate, 1.5 targets left.
After that, thought, okay, what would be nice to do, rather than trying another 100 rounds or whatever it is to try and use those crude old iron sights to try and get onto my 24-inch plate, what about I build a proper rifle and show the rifle doing it with the small group you'd expect out of everything other than, everything doing the job as well as it can, the cartridge just being what it is. So that was a bit of the strategy to go with that. And those are those cases. So what I would say, that a lot of people are saying, how is your case life going to be, running the pressure and all that sort of stuff we're running? Yes, we are running some more pressure. We're up in what would normally be a warm 308 round in the way of the powder that we're actually, the amount of powder we're running in there. I don't share powder loads, but you can do your own. It's not maxed out on what a 308 would be, but it's up there in a warmer 308 load, and a very similar for what we ran as a 308 load for many years. We had 175 grain Berger, this is 174 grain Sierra Match King, and then we're running 2208, which is the same as Varget. So all very similar on that sort of stuff. And perform very similarly, perform very well. People are asking, how is the case life? Listen, this is the first time we've shot it, so I don't know how the case life is. My real thoughts are that because of the shoulder we're running there, because of the way these things are, it's going to extend the life of the case. It's going to not extend the life. It's going to grow the case quite rapidly between shots. In truth, when I first, after it had been fired, and I think I'd fired them twice with lesser powder load, a powder load suited to what the 303s in the likes of the Enfield, that was the Lee speed I was using, but the Lee Enfields, that sort of stuff, all those rifles, what they were used or what they ran, and I didn't notice any problems with it. When I tried to load those same rounds in here, because that's where I was going to start, I found that they wouldn't they wouldn't chamber, and they were actually around about 20 thou, half a millimetre too long. So whether they'd grown that far, I haven't got too complicated about it. What I did was unload those rounds I had. I then took them back by about 10 thou further than that. So I took them back by 3/4 millimetre, refinished the ends of them so that they were all nicely trimmed. And then I did my guesstimation of what a powder should be. I ran 3 different powder loads and just fired them once each, just to see, just one each, to see what my primer said, what the bolt lift was like, what everything was, and it was fine with the top one of those. So then I loaded all of them up like that, and that's what you saw us shoot. Those rounds you saw with this thing shooting out at 1,300 yards were the first shots we'd actually done with in anger, or with being able to sight things and using it like that. Other than that, it was just done to the 3 shots that we've done to find those pressures. So that's all I know at this moment. I expect that the cases are going to grow each time. Well, I did find a little bit of growth, but they were still chamber. I did find sort of about 3 thou of growth on those I think it was 20 rounds in total we fired on that day. So I did find a tiny bit of growth in there. We'll see. Maybe they'll settle at this point into the chamber. Maybe they won't. Maybe we'll only get 5 or 6 shot firings out of them, or even 3. I think that'd be better than that. I think though the worst, what I expect is there'll be a case head separation if it keeps growing. which means it'll break back down here because the case keeps moving away. It thins out at the thinnest point and it'll break there. That's what I'd expect to happen as these failing, but I don't know. That's my pure guess. All sorts of everything else can go into it. Annealing down that, if it's splitting at the top there, then annealing, all the normal bits and pieces. Basically, I'm treating it like a very normal cartridge, and at this stage at least, it's performing like a very normal cartridge. So the only other bit I'd say with both of them, what I asked Grant over there at Swans to do was push the throat forward. It is a 311 barrel, so it is a 303. For those people that don't understand, it's a little confusing. A 308 runs a 30 cal, so a 300 bullet. So we call it a 308, but it's actually smaller than a 303. A 303 actually is a 311 barrel that runs a 303 bullet. So 3 thou different between them. You probably could even get away with running one of the longer bullets. You could probably even run a 30 cal bullet in these things. I think you're going to lose some accuracy. Didn't want to do that. Want to prove it as it really is. So it is a 303 barrel and it is a 303 cartridge. The only thing I did, which was actually very similar to some of the rifles, the old ones anyway, is I pushed the throat forward a little bit. Got them pushed the throat forward about 120 thou, so I could just make sure I pushed that bullet out to its optimum for that case. That's all I did. That's the only bit, which I don't consider a custom chamber. That is a slight bit of throat forward, and if you actually go to factory, you'll find a lot of rifles are set up that anyway. A lot of chambers, or a lot of the throat is set up that way on a factory chamber. So that's the details to go with it. That's all we did. So listen, performed really well. I was really happy with it. It was a calmer wind day, but it actually had quite an irregular wind that we had no vision on. It was actually quite peculiar where we had the target set up. There was literally no wind that you could see at the target. You could hear the wind and feel the wind with us, and we could see it at the higher place. That's actually a little hollow. Doesn't look so much that way, but when we went to pick up the target afterwards, when we were picking it all up, it was just really quite eerie and dull with the wind down there. So there's very little clues what was actually happening, and there was a little bit, I would say around about a 1 to 2 mile an hour change in wind, which is exactly what we saw. It would shoot over here and then it would shoot over there. So we saw that sort of stuff for both of us, but still performed really well. Really happy with it. And yes, I intend to take it further. I'll go through the rifle now quickly. Like I said, it's by MDT, but it's the ORYX chassis, which is what the chassis is. This is one of the early ones. All I've done to it, and the minor thing is down the back here, as I pulled this plate off, I re-drilled the butt plate. It's all aluminium, this the solid piece of chassis, and raised the butt pad up. Really helps with how the rifle forms, not complicated to do, so that's what I did and raised that up. I will get some spaces here so I don't have to run the scope so far forward for me and then it comes back for Sam, but I will run some extra spaces on this to do that. This is, like I said, the early one. I drilled a couple of holes in the bottom of the butt pad, or the bottom of the stock here, to mount my universal bag rider on it. I have my heavy one on there, matches the heavy barrel, gives some balance to it, and gives a little bit more weight to it. I think the rifle comes up at just on 18 pounds, so it has a bit of weight to it. It's not super heavy for a target rifle by any means, but it's not equally your stalking rifle, and it's not trying to be. The other place that, and the rest of it is all as was. Like I said, the trigger, it's the HOWA trigger, which I've simply changed the spring in, make that all work. I've sort of do a bit of building my own springs and that sort of stuff, get it down to the 1.2, 1.3 pounds, so shoots really nicely. Everything back there worked really well. Haven't tried the magazine, could go through a modifier, but otherwise that's just there as basically as a bullet shoe to help them go in. That's all it's doing, so they feed in there. On the front here you see some bits and pieces. We have our component D, it's a medium component D, that bolts directly to the bottom. I just bolt it to the bottom of this chassis with some on this one here, I forgot what I used exactly. Well, listen, this one's a little bit different. Normally what I bolt them to, you can bolt them there with simply some M-locks. It'll bolt into the chassis and mount it up there and it's all done fine. This one, and then on the front here, it doesn't touch the barrel, it's isolated from the barrel, and it runs my steel legs, extension legs, which helps me with the getting more elevation, but it also removes the rubber feet, so then they just dig into the dirt, lets it cycle nicely, all that sort of stuff works really well. On this one, what I did was these modifications under here. I actually took my component D, and then I've welded which I machined up. It's not something that I try and sell, but I welded up basically a steel arc rail to it, so then it's actually bolted from front to back. So it actually is bolted all the way down there in the way that it gives an extra truss section to go with the steel side of it on there. In another one of the ORYX chassis I put a steel insert in the inside of it and bolted it down so everything bolts from underneath to it. But basically it's all to give a little bit more structure to the bottom of the chassis. Much as I like them, these chassis, they have, and it's good strength from front to back. What they have done in the nature of keeping things a little bit lighter for the guys who do want to use them as a stalking rifle, that type of thing, is they've run a little less weight in the front here, which means that for all that sort of stuff, not an issue. Once we go to target side of things, and particularly when we run some slightly bigger cartridges, then it's a little bit light. So in some form or other, putting an extra brace in there is what it's about. This one, what I did, like I said, I went through where I welded this arc on the back here, so then I can use it on a tripod back here, but it also gives a truss section of steel bolted from front to back to give it quite a bit more strength. For this one, I also then added this Picatinny rail at the front here. That's because I plan to run out and get a lot further. I want to run around the 250 minutes of elevation to be able to get out to the sort of stuff I want to get to during the season. So by putting in a Picatinny rail on there, I can then run my forward optic mount. These are on my web store, but then I can go to there where I then have the ability to mount, whether it's the knife force wedge on the front. The knife force wedge could mount to the front of the scope here as well. I have my adapter, so I can just mount that to the front of the scope, the knife force wedge. But once I go to the, as much as you can do that with the Charlie Chirac, which I'm going to need to go there to get up to 3,000 with this, then I can mount it directly to the chassis. So it mounts on the chassis, all going to work nice and neat and tidy like that. So that's why that Picatinny rail's up the front there. I think that's about the list of the bits and pieces that I can share with you here. The likes of the like I said, with the bullets we're using, it's the SMK. There is the PPU, which seem to be a little better ballistic coefficient. If I can find them, I'll probably track them down. I think the cartridge, you know, if I could find a really efficient 200 grain projectile or 190 grain projectile or something like that, that probably would be ideal. But in a 303 or 311, like I said, gets a bit confusing talking about that. But in the 303 caliber bullet projectile, there's not that many choices. But in saying that, this did very well. It's going to work nicely, and really looking forward to going and stretching it out in the season when we get the paddock to the right sort of condition where we can do that. The one other bit that I wanted to, that I should finish on, is that concept that we did went across another barrel as well. And that is, we're going to use the same rifle, and here's another barrel from Swans done up there. Like I said, they really are nicely finished. It's got the same thread in the front of it. This is just 24 inches because this is actually going to run in exactly the same concept, exactly the same principles, the 30-30. And to do the same thing, whether it's 3,000 yards, I'm not going to say that just yet. We'll see what we get to, what we do and all that sort of stuff. But it's another one of where I've used the 30-30, shot it out to 1,100 yards.
Oh, dust behind. I think it was just off left edge, 9 o'clock.
Okay.
That was close.
Okay. Settle back down.
Yep. Hit! Oh, beautiful. Middle.
nicely. I've shot it out to almost a mile. Well, that's already for a ballistic tip round.
Yep.
That's fairly impressive.
Yeah, beautiful.
With the likes of the lever action project that we did that shot really well, really worked nicely. But the bit I ran into with all of the normal 30-30 stuff is we didn't have enough twist. Didn't have enough twist in the barrel. So we've got the barrel done up with enough twist so we can do that side of things. And then yes, we could do it in a lever action, but really, why not take all the other compromises out of it? Not to say a lever action is a compromise, but in the way of making the best target rifle I can. So then just go and test the cartridge. How much can we do with a 30-30? What can we do with a 30-30? With just basically get that twist to the right place, get the barrel, the rifle shooting really nicely. It'll be a really nice, gentle rifle to shoot. And we'll see. I think the 155 grain projectile running at the 2400, 2500 feet per second. We'll see how fast we can get it going, and then see how far we can shoot that thing and how accurate it is at the closer stuff, the 1,000-yard stuff, that type of thing. So anyway, that's the other one. I'd have to hats off to the likes of the Grant at Swans, or the team, Alan Grant and the team at Swan Barrels. They did a really good job with us. I really like the finish of it. They really are schmick. And the rest of it, the rifles come together really nicely. Scope's working really well, the whole lot's working really nicely, and it also looks like a fair few people enjoy it. So I'll put some links down the bottom to the old rifles and the levers and that sort of stuff, shooting these cartridges and what we've done before. If you haven't seen the video of how this was shooting, then I'll put a link down there of what this was working like. And it'll probably be a month or so before we get into the long stuff with this one. Like I said, we've got to get the paddock in the right place. But I'm really looking forward to stretching it out and showing just what the 130, well, they're both around 130 years old, these cartridges, and show what they can do with everything working as it does for the modern stuff, in all set up in the right place. Anyway, guys, that's what I got to show you today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave all your thoughts and comments and things below. And other than that, have a great 2025, and we'll catch you with the next one.